Good afternoon, everybody. Just bear with me for 20-30 seconds whilst we let attendees join. We have a good registration number this afternoon, so I'll just let people join before I introduce and start this afternoon's session, but thank you. So good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Institute of Financial Accountants' latest online national branch meeting. For those of you who haven't come across myself before, my name's Jonathan Barber. I'm the Institute's Head of Business Development and this afternoon's host. Before I hand over to this afternoon's guest speaker, I will just provide members with a brief update on a couple of subject matters, if I may. Can I start, though, with just some housekeeping notes or rules? Please bear with us if we have any technical issues. I do hope I'm able to resolve those as efficiently and as quickly as you would want. If, though, you are having any sound or visual issues, can I ask you maybe first to check your own setup, whether it be laptop, desktop, computer, tablet, etc. We've often found in the past that it's got something to do with somebody's Wi-Fi connectivity. So please bear with us. If there are technical issues, we will look to resolve those as smoothly as possible. These sessions come to life with your observations, your questions, your queries being answered by our guest speaker. So please use the chat facility, or please use the Q&A facility to raise any questions, to share any observations, and to get any queries or concerns answered. So please do use those as we go along. I know Alistair will look to cover any technical questions related to his talk as he goes through the session, so they will be covered as we go through, so please pose them. For everybody's information, the session is being recorded today. We will share early next week further details from Alistair, so just be aware that that will come out to you probably next Monday afternoon. This is a CPD webinar. This is a continuing professional development webinar for members as well as non-members. But I just wanted to bring to everybody's attention, we have a number of other CPD events, all online, happening within November and into the early part of December. Next week, we have a further national branch meeting that will focus very much around the subject matter of human resources. The following day, the same day, we have one of Matthew's webinars that will cover popular accounting, financial reporting and practice management topics. Very good for those who want further details around accounting treatment and financial reporting matters. The 9th of November, we have our latest Starting Out in Practice series. For anybody thinking or recently started out on their practice journey, well worth registering for that. It is a 3-part series, so we'll run on the 9th, the 16th and the 23rd of November. Again, on the 17th, a more accounting treatment, financial reporting led webinar, all about accounting or acting for LLPs. On the 18th of November, there's a national branch meeting that is being hosted by the Institute's Chief Executive, John Edwards. That's John sort of looking back at the last 12 months, but very much looking forward to 2022 and what's in store. We know from the last webinar we ran that John hosted like that, very popular, and one where we would encourage and please ask members to ask questions, attend and get involved. Our latest tax series starts on the 24th of November. Part 2 is on the 1st of December and finishes up on the 8th of December. We're covering the budget. We're covering making tax digital with a talk by HMRC. We're covering inheritance tax in a couple of different guises. We're also looking at corporation tax rebates, and SDLT is another subject matter. So that series starts on the 24th. 25th of November is the IFA International Conference online. The 1st of December, a payroll series that again runs for 3 consecutive weeks. And on the 2nd of December, there is a quarterly financial reporting update. As we turn into November and December, the last of the year's local online branch meetings. If you're a regular attendee of those, please do join us for the last one of 2021. If you've never joined a local meeting before, please find the details on the website underneath the CPD heading and join us for one of those local branch events. I mentioned the international conference. That is something new for all members that we're running on the 25th of November. We've not been able to hold face-to-face regional conferences this year, but we do want to deliver. We are delivering an international conference with an international themed focus where subject matter is relevant whether you are in the UK or anywhere else around the world. We're covering fraud, technology, sustainability, governance, and integrated reporting. I would say this because I'm involved in organising the event, but we do have an excellent range of speakers, probably headlined and worth pointing out that the IFAC Chief Executive, Kevin Dancy, is our lead keynote speaker who will be talking about sustainability and its importance for accountants. Registration details or the link is there for you, but again, do look under the CPD banner on the Institute website. One more slide from me before introducing today's speaker, just a couple of other matters. Renewals. The renewals season and process has started. All members will have received communications from the Institute. Can I just ask, if you have any queries, please get in contact with us, either through email or pick up the phone. We are here to help. We are also here to deal with any questions or queries you have. And a reminder, as we're getting towards the end of the current calendar year, a member's CPD requirement is to meet 40 hours of CPD per annum. 20 of those are verifiable, 20 are non-verifiable. Let me move on. And importantly, today's guest speaker. Today's guest speaker is going to talk about CV writing. I think a fascinating topic and one that is important for members, our students, because I think it's needed from a business knowledge perspective if you are looking to review and recruit into your business or into your practice. I also think it's fascinating and important from a personal knowledge and personal development perspective, regardless of where you are in your career. We don't know what's around the corner and we don't know what opportunities might arise. But I'm delighted to welcome Alistair Morris from the CV and Interview Advisors. Alistair is a former business owner and senior recruiter who has spent the last 10 years helping professionals to move forwards in their career. Alistair's role within CVIA is lead presenter and chief CV and LinkedIn profile appraiser. He has critiqued over 40,000 CVs for individuals across all sectors. His experience includes several years working within the executive search industry, both permanent and interim sectors, and several years now working with CVIA as a coach and presenter. Alistair, a very warm welcome and thank you for your time, and we very much look forward to hearing what you've got to say this afternoon. I will stop sharing my slides now and I will hand over to yourself, but a very warm welcome and I'll leave it in your capable hands.
Lovely. Thank you, Jonathan. Welcome everybody to this session. I appreciate that when you woke up this morning, You probably didn't think the most exciting thing in your day was going to be listening to some guy go on about CVs. What I'm going to try and do is inject a little bit of enthusiasm, maybe a bit of levity into the subject, borderline flippancy possibly, just to jazz it up a bit, because it is a really important subject. Before we get into any of the detail, though, you're probably wondering what on earth and who on earth I am and who on earth the CV and interview advisors are, or CVIA for short. So I'd always briefly explain a little bit about that before we get into any detail. So CVIA exists to help people with what is called personal branding. Talk a little bit more about personal branding as we wander through this session, but in effect, that's how you present yourself to others for whatever purpose. Now, I think most people think of the CV and LinkedIn profile, of course, as your means to apply for jobs and be of interest to prospective employers or clients possibly, but actually it's how you present yourself to anybody at any time. It could be clients, it could be suppliers, it could be customers, it could be anybody for any purposes. And although we're talking about CVs today, LinkedIn switched on 24/7. So you're always promoting something to somebody, whether you like it or not. So our job, our day job, is to help people do that more effectively. And we've been running now for about 16 years. So we've been doing this a good old chunk of time. And as Jonathan just said, I've spent a good few years reviewing CVs, talking to people like you and your competitors, talking to recruiters, search consultants, headhunters, HR folk. And at the very least, what I hope to bring today is some insight in terms of what life is like in the job market and how you should present yourself more effectively. Critically, everything you're about to see is proven in the marketplace. And that's sort of full stop, end of debate. It works. Whether you like it or not, whether you agree with it or not, is your business. But I can promise you everything you're about to see is proven in the finance and accounting sector. So what you're about to see, it works. It gets people more interest, more engagement, more interviews. That's the bottom line. And that's really important. And we know this because we've done it so many times. We've got the feedback. I can assure you, if we were charging people to help them and we didn't help them, we get a few people knocking on our door, and I probably wouldn't be here to tell the tale. And on that subject, this webinar, of course, is entirely free other than investment in your time. But just so you know, and just in case it offends anybody, right at the end of the session, we always offer some great discounts on our services. Whether you believe you need help or not is your business, and I'll give you the clues to help you along that path, but they will appear right at the end of the session. So let's get into the subject matter. Here's a really nice quote. Well, actually, it's not nice because it's a bit depressing in terms of the importance of it. These words are uttered by recruiters, HR folk, too often, basically, too frequently. It's almost impossible to tell who's good and who isn't from their CV. Now, if you just think about that for a moment, that is actually really important. What this means, and probably the single biggest frustration recruiters and hiring managers have these days, is that, and employers, by the way, if they're doing their own recruitment, is that they'll get a heap of applicants for a job and they won't have the faintest idea who's worth interviewing and who isn't. They just cannot tell who's worth their time. Now, the danger of this is that it then becomes a lottery in terms of whether you get an interview or not, a complete lottery. And you don't want to be in a lottery because that means you're affected by elements you can't control. It's just a game of chance, literally. Now, lurking behind this quote is a really interesting statistic. The vast majority of people on this webinar right now, I rather suspect, think their CV is okay, good or strong. And that's a statistic that's pretty robust throughout the cohort of candidates, no matter the sector, no matter the country. Most people think their CV is good, strong, okay, effective. That's just a fact. However, you ask recruiters, hiring managers, HR staff, whether that's true. And interestingly, they'll tell you almost the complete opposite. They'll say that the vast majority of CVs they receive are poor, weak, or ineffective, meaning they cannot make proper decisions on who to interview. Now, the danger of this is if in reality you're in that pile of CVs that aren't very good, it's easy for the recruiter, the hiring manager, the business owner to reject you and move on to someone else, because they only need a small sliver of applicants to have a decent CV to then form a shortlist. Now, to give you some stats behind this, on average, certainly across Europe, 250 people apply for a job, a single job. It varies from time to time, but on average, it's about 250. From that 250, the vast majority are going to get rejected by a machine or a human pretty quickly. If you've gone through a job board, it's a machine. If you've gone through a database of some kind or an internet device, it's a machine. If you're applying to a small business who's used a job board, you're still going to go through a machine. And if you've applied direct to a small business and it's direct to the individual, you may get the human eye look at your CV, but they're still going to quickly look at 250 CVs and make a very quick decision. And 240 of those people are going to get rejected pretty quick, leaving around 10 on the long list. Those 10 will get a more considered assessment, and 3, 4, or 5 will get invited to interview, the shortlist. So you've got to have a really good, strong CV to get into that shortlist in the main. How do you know whether your CV is one of the good ones or not? Well, it is relatively straightforward. It is all about whether you're getting the interviews you deserve for the jobs you're interested in. That is the most important, accurate measure of the quality of your CV. So if you apply for 10 jobs, let's say, and you get 10 interviews, happy days, 100% success rate. There's nothing you can do to improve upon that. Why would you? Keep doing whatever you're doing. If you're getting 0 interviews from those 10 applications, bearing in mind, of course, you believe you could do the job, or 1 or 2 interviews, I'd suggest you probably need to look at your CV. It's nowhere near as effective as it should be. And if you're somewhere in the middle, it's a balance. It's a judgment call, really, as to whether you need to do anything or not. So those are the harsh statistics and the background to this session. Here are some of the things, I'm not going to go through these in any great detail, but here are some of the things people consistently get wrong on their CV that trip people up and get people rejected. Now, bear in mind, this doesn't matter how good you are at what you do. You could be the best person in your marketplace, in your field. But if you're one of the 250 applying for a job, it's easy to be rejected if you fall foul of any of the criteria that have just popped up on the screen. And we're going to touch on most of these. Some of them are basic and they just shouldn't happen, like spelling and grammar. In today's world, with all the systems that we have and the capability of things like Microsoft Word and grammar checkers and such like, it's easy. Most recruiters, most hiring managers, most businesses will just reject people if they've made a fundamental mistake with spelling or grammar. And it doesn't matter how good you are at your real job, that's the reason you get rejected. The one right at the top is a really interesting one. We'll get into this in a minute. Ambiguous go-to-market description. What on earth does that mean? Well, that means that it's not clear from your CV what you do. Now, you might think that's a bit odd. You might think, hang on a minute, is that true? How hard can it be to figure out what I am from my CV? Amazingly hard, and you'll be surprised. And I'll show you some examples very shortly as to why that's true. That's probably the biggest problem people have. It's not clear from the CV what the person is. Now, I know you'll find that hard to believe, but I'll demonstrate why this is so very shortly. A lot of people pick the wrong skills. Again, you might think, how hard can that be? How hard can it be to list the skills that you possess on a CV? Most people get them spectacularly wrong. They'll talk about soft personal behavioral skills, enthusiasm, dedication, commitment, passion, drive, and dynamism, the ability to work in a team or as an individual. That's the wrong kind of material, and I'll touch on why shortly. And last one I'll deal with now are people who are getting a bit too creative with their CV. So they think color and shading and boxes and graphics are the way forward. Now, if you're 100% sure your CV will land on the desk of a human being before it hits the machine, you might get lucky with that. you might get lucky. But just bear in mind, most organizations, big or small, use some form of internet platform, job board, aggregator, people like Indeed. There's loads of algorithms there. They haven't got the faintest idea how to interpret, let's say, 6 blobs out of 8 representing some skill you have. So if you've got 8 blobs, 8 presumably being excellent, and you've decided to give yourself 6 out of 8 for some skill or other, Sage accounting package, 6 out of 8, the systems cannot make head nor tail of it. They have no idea that 8 is excellent and 6 is it very good? Is it good? Is it, what is 6? And also that's a self-assessed skill. Who's to tell a third party would have the same view as you as to whether you're 6 out of 8 for a particular skill? So all those graphical infographics, creative presentations are probably just a bit too far forward at the moment in time. The world is not ready for them. So what should you be doing? Let us start with the structure of a CV. So this is the structure that we tend to adopt. I'll get into the detail in a minute, but broadly, these are the sections that you should have on a CV. And when we write a CV, these are the sections we create. And bear in mind, we know this works. It's those first 3 that are super important. And interestingly, notice that the first 3 sections of the CV have got nothing to do with what you've been doing and where you currently are, your career history. That's number 4 on the list. Now, in a while, I'll show you a CV just to give you some context to this. So our belief and our tool, if you like, our methodology to get ahead of the game and present to your audience a more effective message is hidden within those first 3 sections of the CV: the profile summary, an introductory paragraph, the key skills, which are bullet points, and some career highlights, which I'll explain shortly. It's those 3 sections that are really super important. They form what we call a strong business case, if you like, a justification as to why on earth someone should be interested in you. And this is all before your career history. Most people open up on their CV with their career history way too early. Now, just bear in mind, if you work for an organization no one's ever heard of, or has a poor reputation, or you have a job title that isn't what you want to do next, or just plain weird and not normally used outside of your current employer or organization, all of those things are reasons why you'd not want to broadcast that to your audience too quickly. So why open up your CV and almost the first thing that you do other than your name and address is go, bam, here's where I'm at, here's what I'm doing, and I know that none of this information is particularly useful, but it is what it is. Well, that's just nuts. So you've got to explain crystal clear as to why you're suitable for a particular role, and that's done by those first 3 sections of the CV. Now, obviously, we're going to get into the detail of those, and I'll explain a little bit more about them. So, introductory statement. Lots of people probably have this on their CV. Some won't give it a name. They'll just say name, address, bam, a little sentence or 2 about themselves. Some will call it a personal summary, a personal profile. Some people call it a career overview or a career synopsis. Interestingly, and we'll touch on this later, the titles of the sections of your CV now matter. They are like digital signposts. And the algorithms behind some of those automated applicant tracking systems will be looking for certain content, and they will be looking for the headings of the sections of your CV to identify the content. So the titles now matter. You cannot call these things just random words or thinking, oh, I'll be clever, I'll invent something the world's never seen before as the title for this section of the CV. The problem with that is that if the world's never seen it before, nor have the systems or their algorithms, and they'll skim right over the content that you've then provided. Now, I said right at the beginning of this session that you really need to be very careful about your positioning, your message. And I said that a lot of people get rejected because it's not clear from the CV what on earth the individual does. And I knew that most people would think that's got to be just plain wrong. It's got to be obvious from a CV what you do. Let me illustrate what goes on in reality. So imagine you're a recruiter or running a small business, a practice, and you're looking for somebody in the finance. I'm not going to say what yet, because I'm going to show you 3 examples of real life people who were applying for a real life job and in real life got rejected. And they got rejected for quite a lot of other jobs as well, because I was watching. So here's the first example, the introductory text of a real life person's CV. Now, I have to tell you, all 3 examples I'm going to show you from competent, credible individuals qualified to perform the job they'd applied for. So in all possibility, any one of these 3 could have been a good candidate to employ. In fact, one of them could have been the best candidate in the marketplace. They'll never know because they never got an interview. I can't tell you for sure, but I have a rather strong suspicion that one of these 3 could have been at least as good as, possibly better than the person that actually got offered the job. Why did they get rejected? Well, you can see the first example on screen. This is typical of people who focus on the wrong material. Lovely stuff. I'm sure this person's really nice. They sound lovely. Utterly useless. Can you tell me what this person does? Remember I said it's really hard to tell from a CV what people do. What does this person do? Anybody got any ideas? No, of course not. It can random guess. Random guess. It's not clear. Now, this is all that got read before this person got rejected. So although later on the CV, it became clear that this individual was qualified to perform the particular role they'd applied for and had the right experience, they got rejected because the filterer, the human doing the initial filtering, thought, oh God, not again. Please, when will I find someone relevant to me or my client's needs? So this person got rejected, and notice the use of all those skills I dissed earlier. Lovely things to have, of course, but utterly useless at presenting on the CV. Now, you might be thinking, well, hang on a minute. That's not fair. Surely employers, organizations are looking for conscientious, hardworking, reliable people with excellent interpersonal skills. Yeah, of course they are. And I know some of the adverts often ask for skills like that. But just think about it. If you were employing an individual, when is the first opportunity you have to actually assess any of the skills mentioned on the screen right now? When is the first time you get to see those skills in action? And the answer is possibly at interview, if you've got a good interview process. But the reality is you're not going to really know whether this person's keen, conscientious, hardworking, and reliable until they've been working in your business for a month or 2. And then you're either going to think, oh, wow, I got lucky there. Joe Bloggs is truly a lovely person. Or how on earth can I get rid of this person because they're an absolute nightmare? So the reality is putting this information on the CV is pointless. It serves no purpose other than to get you rejected. Second example, slightly better. Why is it slightly better? Well, we're still going on about how highly motivated now this time, but we've got the reference to reconciling, a technical skill, so a bit of a tick. Company's accounts. Hallelujah. This person seems to be in the accounting space, but not much better. At what level does this person operate? We haven't got the faintest idea. They've got something to do with the accounting sector, industry, environment, but really we haven't got the faintest. This could be all sorts of people at all sorts of levels. Third example is as bad as the first. This is just 3 examples. Remember I said the vast majority of recruiters think that the vast majority of CVs they get are poor, weak, ineffective. This is why. And once you've seen this a few times, and when I say recruiter, I mean anybody involved in actually selecting people. I don't just mean recruitment consultants or recruitment agencies. I'm talking about anybody involved in the process of selecting individuals. You get fed up of seeing this. You really do. You just reject. As soon as you see this, you think, no, 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 no. And you wait until a handful of people present themselves in a more effective way. So what do you really need to do? Let's take a look at a good profile or summary statement. It needs to address 4 critical areas. It does need to precisely describe what you are. None of those examples I showed you did that. You really then need to explain what we call a core value proposition is. In other words, what is your professional reason for existence? Now, I'll show you an example in a minute. You then need to talk about what you're good at, technical and functional skills only, no soft personal behavioral skills. And you need to reinforce the skills that you know your audience would be interested in. And we then use a technique which salespeople are often taught, which is FAB, features and benefits. Let me explain all of that lot. So here's an example of an individual where we have written, and this is slightly fictitious, I've had to change quite a bit of information just to make it a bit more relevant and to protect the innocent. But in essence, this is how we write that introductory paragraph. So if you're going for an accounting role or a finance role, it will have a job title. And you need to occupy that space. You need to get as close to, if not duplicate that title in the first sentence of your introductory text. And actually, I'm going to show you something a bit later where I'd recommend you actually stick the job title that you're applying for after your name at the top of the CV. It's all about this digital signposting. So remember, those are the individuals I just showed you. I'm a really enthusiastic, driven, motivated, so-and-so. But we had no idea what they did. Now we know exactly what this person is aspiring towards, accounts assistant, and they have been a trainee accountant. These are words and phrases that people are actually searching for. You'll notice there are no references to soft personal behavioral skills. There's no idea as to whether this individual is enthusiastic, driven, motivated, reliable, because no one's interested in it. What they are interested in are things like general ledgers, record keeping, bookkeeping, stock levels, cost center management, purchase ledger, budgets, sales ledgers, and all of those things are mentioned in here somewhere. They're the kind of phrases and keywords that recruiters in the broadest sense are looking for. So that first sentence, really important. It sets the scene. Now, if you're a recruiter, having gone through all of those, I'm really enthusiastic, I'm lovely, warm and cuddly, I'm this, I'm that, reject, reject, reject. All of a sudden, let's imagine you're looking for an accounts assistant. Here we've got an appropriately qualified accounts assistant staring us in the face, who seems to be pretty good at maths, which is an appropriate competence. Then you're thinking, hallelujah, now we've got someone who we could work with. Now we've got someone who goes in the maybe pile, possibly the yes pile, for further assessment. And that may be all they read, and you're through to the next stage of the process. They won't read the whole CV necessarily. They'll just scan for something that makes them think, great, this is one of the 10 on the long list. The text in red, this is only for the purposes of this webinar, is just to identify a benefit that accrues from a previously mentioned feature. So for example, if you look at the second sentence, key strengths include, and it says maintaining an up-to-date sales ledger and chasing payments. So that's a feature. Now it'd be easy. I wish more people would claim this. Obviously the 3 examples I just showed you, the bad examples, they didn't get anywhere close to talking about this. So you might find quite a lot of candidates saying that they can maintain an up-to-date sales ledger, full stop. And we say, go a bit further. That's the feature. Lots of people could claim to have it. Go a bit further. What's the benefit of that to the business? To support profitability. That's the benefit. So this technique, feature and benefit, is a really useful technique to use on your CV. And we incorporate that in all the CVs we write. It enhances the kind of words and phrases that are embedded within your CV. And it just makes it seem that you've taken time to think, what's important to this business? What have I got to offer them? Now you can see there are a lot of benefits. There are another 3 or 4 embedded within this paragraph. So that's a good introductory statement. Here's another one, just a slightly different level, just to show you the kind of style. This time, an accountant who's doing something that supports successful accountancy practices. This kind of text helps trigger the algorithms, gets you found, and visually just makes you look more relevant to the audience. And it removes that lottery element from the initial filtering part of a recruitment process. Really important. And say that text is often enough to get you to the next stage of the process. And you might think that a bit odd, but very rarely does anybody read your entire CV. In fact, I wouldn't mind betting that even the people that get offered jobs, the chances of any one person having read the entire CV for the person who actually gets offered the job is quite slim. They'll have skimmed various bits of it to make a decision. Now, the second area, remember I said there were 3 areas on the CV that are really important: the introductory paragraph, then some key skills, and then some career highlights. So here's the second element, the key skills. This is relatively straightforward, but it's where a lot of people go wrong. So this is just listing skills in the way that I've presented them on the screen. 2, 3, 4 word statements, no more than that. Bullet points, I'd say typically 12 to 18 of these at the top of your CV after that introductory paragraph, but they all have to be technical and functional skills. And this list has to be engineered with the specific job you've applied for in mind. You cannot have a CV that has the same skills on it all the time if you're applying for jobs where they have a different expectation of the skills you need to perform. So you need to tweak this list. You either need to reorder it or edit it to suit the job you've applied for. This has 2 key purposes. You send a CV with the right skills on it to the right person, and visually, of course, they're just going to think, yeah, this is what we're after. You're mirroring back their precise terminology. The second advantage of course, is digital. If you embed the right skills into your CV, the SEO, the search engine optimization of your CV, will be enhanced. And so it'll get picked up by the databases, the job boards more readily. But you've got to make sure the skills mirror those that are being sought. You can't just put a random set of skills down and keep your fingers crossed. Then we have the career highlights, the third area of the 3 that are really important to a strong CV. Now, this is an area that most people don't get anywhere close to delivering, and is our secret sauce, if you like. It's something that we do. We've done it for a good few years. It works really well. So we would recommend, before you get anywhere near your career history, you place some evidence of your ability to deliver results or competencies. And we create 3 normally career highlights, if you like, case studies, examples of your work that are relevant to the audience that you're targeting. And we use this methodology, this framework, STAR, to write the content. Now, again, I'm going to show you an example very shortly. So STAR is situation, task, actions, result. You may have heard of it. It's used in all walks of life. It's not our invention. But what we have done is incorporate this framework into writing a CV. So here's an example of one career highlight or case study. Again, this is real, but I've tweaked some of the information. And if you read it, it follows STAR. The first sentence is always the situation. What on earth was going on? The second sentence is the task. What was the responsibility resting on the shoulders of the individual at that moment in time? The bulk of the remaining text are the actions they took. And the final sentence is the result, what actually happened. So what most people do, if anybody mentions an achievement on their CV, they've normally picked up from the internet or their Aunt Maud or some other slightly dodgy source as to, oh, you got to be brief, you got to keep it snappy. People don't read lots of detail. So you may be looking at this paragraph thinking, surely people don't have the time to read this. Well, you'd be surprised. If there's one trend at all of late in the world of recruitment, it's that people desperately want evidence of your ability to perform the role. So they're not going to read drivel. They're not going to read that overly generic stuff we saw earlier from those 3 candidates. who started off their CV with, I'm a really warm, cuddly, dynamic, passionate individual, kind of nonsense. Nobody reads that. They're not interested. But what they are interested in is proof of competence. If they're trying to make a decision on who to longlist or shortlist for a job, and they see this kind of evidence, they'll read it, they'll pick up on it, and they'll use it as a reason to put you into the next stage of the process. So we'd recommend at least 3 of these on your CV. In fact, 3 is the magic number, not too many, not too few. They have to be relevant to your audience. That's the critical element. So again, you can't just have 3 examples of things that you've done that you either enjoyed doing or that are the same all the time, yet you're applying for different jobs. These have to be targeted to your audience. But they're very effective. They contain great content. So again, your digital footprint is enhanced. But of course, they're going to appeal to the hiring manager who's going to be thinking, yeah, this is what we want. We want someone to come into our business who can do this kind of stuff. Get them in. So let's take a look at a CV. Now, I have to be careful these days as to whose CV I show people. So this chap, Matt Craven, he's actually the guy that runs CV and interview advisors. And you can see that because it's pretty much his CV in real life. Although in this context, he's pretending that he's targeting commercial director roles. Now, what he's going for, his level just doesn't matter. Anybody with any experience at all, and I mean literally 6 months experience plus, this is the style of CV that we write. And you can see those first 3 sections that I just spent some time going through are present here. The introductory paragraph, the bullet pointed key skills, the 3 star-based career highlights. And only then do you get to Matt's career history, which is deliberately quite far down page 1. Now, that's really important because what we found is that folk doing the recruiting and the machines looking for people, they'll pick up on all the rich content that you can see here, top 2/3 of page 1, you see on the screen. Matt's CV may get a more detailed look later, but the first job is to get onto the long list or the short list. Otherwise, you don't stand a chance, of course. Now, some of you will probably have heard, again, a bit of an urban myth. Oh, but my Aunt Maud again, this infamous Aunt Maud, or I've heard that you get 2.3 seconds of someone's time or 7.9 seconds of someone's time. And people misinterpret that and they think, well, I've heard that. My CV's got to be read from start to finish in 2.3 seconds. So I'm going to construct a CV that's as short as possible and as brief as possible so that people can see it in 2.3 seconds. Well, the only factual part of that statement and belief is a limited amount of time, but it's got nothing to do with whether people can read your entire CV in any amount of time. As I said earlier, the chances of anybody reading your entire CV, even if you get offered a job, are quite slim. What it is about is how long does it take someone to make a decision as to whether you get to the next stage of the recruitment process or not? So it may be 2.3 seconds. It may be 9.7 seconds. It could be 11.32 seconds. Who on earth knows? It's going to be different from everybody. There's nobody that says you have got to give someone X amount of time. It varies. I'm sure some people will read the whole CV, but they will be rare. But critically, what you've got to do is make sure that quickly on page 1, you have conveyed enough information and evidence to support why you deserve to go to the next stage of the process. And what you see on screen is responsible for doing that a lot because we get the feedback. We know this works. Come back to Matt's CV later. Just a brief interlude. I said right at the end of the end of this session, I would explain how we might be able to help you if you decided you need help, and you might be wondering how that works. First of all, you've got to figure out whether you need help or not, of course. So if you get lots of interviews for jobs you're interested in, just keep on doing whatever you're doing. That's the most important thing. But if at any stage of your career you're not getting the interest you deserve, the very first thing you need to do is look at your CV and probably your LinkedIn profile. And that maybe that's a subject for another day, LinkedIn, but certainly look at your CV or how you fill out an application form if that's how you've been applying for jobs, because it's likely that there's something fundamentally wrong with the message that you're pushing out there. Now, we can fix that for you. And the way we fix that is basically we'll match you with one of our experts. And we do have experts. We don't have spotty-faced teenagers writing these things. We have proper qualified, professional, trained individuals to write the kind of material that you've seen so far. And they will do all the hard work, and they will give you a document that will get you more interviews. Back to the CV and the other sections. Now, I'm going to be briefer here because they are less important. You might think it's a bit odd. Surely your career history is one of the more important elements of a CV. Of course, it has to be on the CV, but it's actually not that important. What I've gone through in a bit of detail is the really important stuff. However, and we'll go back to Matt's CV to bring this to life, but broadly, in your career history, it depends a little bit on how much experience you have. If you've got 15, 20 years experience, you don't need to list everything you've ever done. You certainly don't need to be giving your first job as much space as your last job, because that's just nonsensical. Whether you list everything you've ever done is entirely up to you, or if you were working with us. You don't have to list everything you've ever done. If you fear age discrimination, you certainly wouldn't want to list everything you've ever done, because that carries a date, and then people can do the maths and work out how old you are. Within your career history, there ought to be smaller achievements. So I've dealt with the 3 best things that you could do in those career highlights, the 3 best bits of evidence you could present. But within your career history, you ought to also be mentioning other good things that you've done, achievements, accomplishments. For those with a reasonable tail to their career, you might want the detail of your last 4 jobs, roughly, or 8 to 10 years. And then anything earlier than that, just abbreviate to 1 line, have an earlier career section, and just have from, to, role, employer. And that's that, end of. We tend to put education and the detail of qualifications and professional development towards the back of the CV, especially if you've got any experience. The focus of the CV, especially page 1, should be your experience. There's no harm in that introductory statement talking about headline news of qualifications at whatever level that may be. You know, if you're degree educated, IFA qualified, or whatever, MBA educated, for example, you can get that message across in the text in your profile summary statement. But all the detail back of the CV. Ditto personal details. You may have noticed, I wouldn't expect you've noticed, but you may have noticed that when I showed you Matt's CV, just page 1, no idea where he lives. His address is deeper in the CV. Testimonial evidence, really important. If you've got a LinkedIn account and you've gathered recommendations from anybody, we'd recommend getting some of that content onto your CV rather than references available on request, which, I mean, it's harmless. No one's going to give you any grief for having references available on request, but is that any use? If people want references, they're going to ask you for references, whether you've got them available or not. You're going to get asked for them. What about getting some testimonial evidence on your CV? That's way more powerful. And a lot of people say, should I have hobbies and interests? And we normally say, not unless they support why you're going for a particular job, which is going to be rare. So not so long ago, I had a guy in IT send me his CV, and he had, and I'm still not sure whether he's being serious or not, but he actually had on his CV, strong senior IT project manager, hobbies and interests, collecting fridge magnets. And, you know, I chuckled. Maybe that's some form of ism that I should be recognizing and taking some kind of corrective action about. But it made me chuckle, and probably not in a good way, if I'm absolutely honest. But I also suspect others would look at it in a similar way. So just be very careful. On a more slightly serious note, let's imagine you were a season ticket holding fan of Manchester United, and you said that was your hobby and interest, and your CV lands on the desk of a season ticket holding Manchester City fan. Shouldn't make a blindest bit of difference, but the world's a strange place. So be careful with hobbies and interests. Basically, they're your private personal business. They have nothing to do with your professional capacity. And a lot of folk then say, well, what about the number of pages of a CV? I've heard that it should be 2. There's no magic number. It's almost certainly not going to be 1. If you've got more than 7 to 10 years experience, it's going to be a struggle on 2. So typically most CVs we write are 3 pages. Some of them are 4. But really, it's about page 1. That's the critical page. Whether they're 2, 3, 4 pages follow is less of an issue. I come back to Matt's CV. We've dealt with this page. This is all about why should Matt be seriously considered as a commercial director. Notice top of the CV after his name, commercial director. First sentence of his profile summary statement, commercial director. Spoiler alert, Matt has never been a commercial director. He's currently a managing director, never held the position commercial director. Why is he putting that on his CV? Because if that's what he's going for, that's what the systems will be looking for. He needs to send a digital signpost. Look, I'm a commercial director. As long as the rest of the CV justifies why he can perform the role of commercial director, all is well. What Matt couldn't do, nor I suspect could any of you, you can't put your name - nuclear submarine captain, because we don't have the skills or the competencies to perform that role. But Matt can certainly get away with commercial director. No problem at all. That is normally a bit weird. A lot of people think about that and think, well, hang on a minute, can you do that? Yeah, of course you can do that, as long as you can evidence it. We're being entirely honest later on in the CV what Matt actually is, but this is about positioning yourself, your personal brand. Page 2 of Matt's CV, where we get into the career history. Really, the message here is that as Matt goes back in time, less and less space is devoted to the work that he's done. What Matt's not doing is dumping great chunks of his job description into this space, which is what most people do. Most people just say, responsible for this, responsible for that, duties included. So you'll notice the kind of wording is a little bit more conversational. It's giving a bit more of a story. How did Matt get here? How did he fit in? What was he responsible for? Yes, to a degree, but also what did he deliver? So you'll see key projects and achievements in each role, highlighting what he actually did. Duties and responsibilities will be held by the person that preceded you, and more than likely the person that will succeed you. So how unique are they? They're not. They're just what is expected of the job. Your CV needs to be an explanation of what you have to offer the world, what you have to offer the world, not the job, you. Final page of a 3-page CV that Matt's had. We've got a few more bits and pieces, his education and some personal details. And right at the end, that testimonial evidence, recommendations. That is far more powerful than references available on request. Just one example is great. If you've got a couple, that's fine. And you could be getting that from LinkedIn, of course. Now, just a brief few pointers before we wrap up. Applicant tracking systems, or ATS as they're known. I've drawn some attention to these factors already. Putting the job title you're going for at the top of the CV after your name is important. More subtly, the phrase expert in, or the 2 words expert in, these systems are often looking for what you are an expert in. So just putting expert in somewhere in that profile summary statement is often productive. It will signpost the systems to look at the content that then follows and make a judgment on it. So if someone's looking for genuinely expertise in a certain accounting package, and you then mention that on your CV, that's good news. I think most people realize key skills should be on the CV, but make sure they're technical and functional skills, not soft personal behavioral skills. No recruiter in the world wakes up in the morning and enters into their database or job board or whatever words like enthusiasm, dedication, passion, drive, the ability to work in a team or as an individual. They're not looking for it. What they are looking for are the technical and functional skills specific to the role that they're recruiting for. So for that reason, match as much content as you can with the job in mind. You have a job description or a person specification or the advertisement, pick out the technical and functional stuff. Use the terminology of the organization, not your own terminology. Mirror that back to them. The headings of your CV matter. We touched on that. And finally, you need some geographic reference on your CV. The systems can do the maths. They can look at where you are, where the opportunity is, and unless there's some decent explanation as to why you're making quite a large move, this is particularly relevant for people making international moves, let alone regional moves within their own country. Be very careful about this because the systems could reject you based on its beliefs that you're too far away from the opportunity. So just be wary of that, conscious of that. So to conclude, I promised some special offers on our services. So at if any point in the not too distant you think you need help, here's how we can help. These are discounts that come to you through IFAs, your IFA membership. So they're quite a discount on our normal service prices. For most people, we write a CV and a LinkedIn profile at the same time. Don't have to, but that's what we do for most people. And with that, you get 3 of those star-based career highlights as standard. That's the minimum to target a type of role. I'm afraid this business of writing a proper CV is not cheap. So if you're in the UK, it's £299 plus VAT, but that's over £100 less than it would ordinarily be. If you're outside the UK, it's £299 sterling. There's no VAT to pay. And those offers remain valid for just over a week. If you've got a bit more experience under your belt, or you are targeting more than one type of role, you're probably going to need more than 3 star-based career highlights. You're going to need a portfolio, so we could provide you with 6. And the idea then is you pick the 3 most relevant ones every time you send off your CV. And there's a deal on that as well. And those offers are available at the URL that you can see on the screen. And I've just highlighted that. And we do have, but you need to contact us directly to inquire about this. We do have a pay in 3 installment plan, no interest or anything like that. It's literally you divide the prices you see on the screen by 3 and you pay the first installment, let's say now, the second installment the following month, the third installment the month after that. The only small print surrounding that is that you need to use a debit or a credit card that's valid for at least 4 months hence, because otherwise it becomes an administrative nightmare. So if you're interested in that, just visit our website, contact us, and we'll talk you through that option. Otherwise, that concludes the session. I'm very grateful for your time. I'm going to hand back to Jonathan, who might just then link up and explain whether there have been any questions or comments that need to be dealt with, and I'll answer those live. Jonathan, how does it look?
Yeah, no, look, really interesting. Fascinating the way that you've gone through the structure that you as an organization use and you would recommend, and the detail that I think you put into those various sections. And I know there were, 2 or 3 people commenting as you were going through saying, thank you, really interesting, really valued. I think there was a comment around that, understand now why I might not have been shortlisted on various occasions. So I would take those as very positive comments and feedback. Thank you, Alistair.
Good.
There was a particularly interesting question. How does one tackle a career change in a CV where what you have done in the past has no real relevance to the role you are applying for?
Yeah, that is a really good point. That does crop up a lot, and it makes everything I've talked about even more acute, because of course, if someone picks up your current CV And basically it's saying, look at me, I'm doing something completely different from what you might expect, then it's not going to be too successful. Now, there's only so much anybody can do, because of course, what you've done in the past is what you've done and you can't change it. But what you can do is, by following the methodology I've gone through, particularly with those three first sections, the language that you use, any attention you can draw to maybe qualifications that you've recently undertaken to switch career, that's where you've really got to make the difference. Because I guarantee one thing, you are going to be up against some people who are very relevant and experienced, but are making a right hash of it on their current CV. Guaranteed. They could have been in the industry for 5, 10, 15 years as a competitor to you, but making a right hash of explaining that on their current CV. So if you can go in with a CV that, okay, you don't have the experience someone's looking for, but you've explained clearly that you're qualified now, which I'm hoping that this person's, got the accreditations or whatever is required to do their new career. That's going to help. You need to talk about it. That you've got transferable skills and competencies that are still relevant and can be evidenced. That's worth doing. And you do all that before you get to your career history, which is the bit that was probably holding you back right now. And if you were to explain, as I say, too quickly, this is what I'm doing now, and I really would like to change, people just go straight out. They don't see that. They don't see the potential. So by explaining some of the stuff I've gone through, page 1, before you get to your career history, that will make a big difference. That's the best way of overcoming that kind of restriction.
Alistair, thank you. There's another question where somebody has asked, are there some CV templates for an AAT bookkeeper? I appreciate with the earlier examples you gave, you were focused on maybe an IFA qualified accountant. You talked about accounts assistant or assistant accountant.
Yeah.
Again, I fully understand that every time you apply for a role, you must adapt your CV for that particular job that you're applying for. But maybe what I could say to the person who's asked that question, think about the examples Alistair gave and put in the fact that you are an AAT qualified accountant and
Absolutely.
you are a bookkeeper rather than an accounts assistant. But as also Alistair showed with Matt's CV, he kept on using the title of the job that Matt was applying for. So Matt might be a managing director, but he kept on referring to commercial director. So I think, Alistair, unless there's anything you want to add to that particular point or question, I'm trying to answer it on your behalf rather than having to sort of go through or create a template, which I know won't be possible now. So.
Yeah, it is. And it's also difficult for us to show real examples because of the way they're written. It makes it easy to identify by just sticking that text into Google and then suddenly the individual pops up and then we're into a whole heap of data protection nightmare. Yeah. So we have to be careful. Exactly what you said, Jonathan. Yeah, do that. Interestingly, I didn't mention it at the time. Those 3 bad examples I showed everybody, they were all AAT qualified bookkeepers. That was the key requirement of the role. Yet, if you think about it, none of the 3 examples mentioned bookkeeper, none of them mentioned AAT. That's why they got rejected.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's great. Glenn, you've also asked a question, will we be sending a recording of this webinar? Yes, we can do. The Institute also have a YouTube channel. What we will be doing is we will be sending on Monday morning an email to everybody who has attended this webinar with the details of the offer that's on the screen there. We will also send a link to the Institute's YouTube channel so that you can access a recording of today's session. But yes, that will be provided, Glenn. So thank you for the question. I don't think there are any others specifically, Alistair, apart from, there's a lot of thanks coming back to you, which I can completely understand. Comments like excellent presentation, very, very helpful. Now understand the common mistakes that do appear on or can be made on a CV. So I think I think it's been a very useful session. So thank you on behalf of everybody who's listened and taken part today. Insightful has been used, very helpful has been used. So Alistair, on behalf of the Institute and today's audience, can I thank you very much indeed for your time. I might come back to you, because if this is the sort of response we're getting, then there might be follow-up sessions that you may want or be able to deliver for us. So that's a conversation offline and outside of this arena. But thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. To everybody who's attended, we will send an email to you on Monday morning. I say Monday morning because my colleague who would normally do this is on annual leave this week. So please bear with us for sort of 48 hours, but you will get an email Monday. To everybody who's joined, thank you for doing so. It's about investing in your own development. It's about investing in your continual professional development, attending the Institute's webinars. So thank you for doing so. To all, sorry, I've just had a couple of Q&A points that I can't pick up. Right, sorry, thank you, that's great. To all of you, have a good afternoon, have a good remainder of your week, and we look forward to seeing you at next week's national branch meeting. As I say, the subject is around human resources, which I know many of our members in practice do find themselves being asked questions by their clients. So one to probably just attend and register. Go back to the CPD. There's a lot being offered by the Institute. Please do take a look at the website, register where appropriate, and we look forward to seeing and helping you further. Alistair, again, thank you. To everybody, have a good afternoon. Stay well, keep safe. Thank you all very much indeed. Bye-bye.